What do you think? People are asset or liability? And if they're asset, why every company wants to replace it with machine learning?
We're going to do better if our communication is top notch and if our goals are aligned and if
Hmm.
we're like checking in on all of these things in a structured way and information travels through the
Hmm.
organization also in a structured, deliberate way.
When you were working, a small team of engineers started working, and then, of course, when you are founding a company or co-founders and founders, they love their companies as
Yeah,
their
absolutely.
babies, right? And they do not want to destroy that. So, why things got changed? What were the key factors that pushed the company's culture toward the politics and leg pulling and all the stuff?
The hard part is obviously well, there's two, right? On one hand, and we do this, like we get together every once in a while. Like like the Performa team will meet and like assemble in person and spend a week together every once in a while.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali. I'm the CEO of Al-Burraq Technologies. And as we are telling you again and again that we will keep bringing more tech stars to your screen. So today we have Alex Furman with us. He has been very hard to catch, and that is why it took us so long time to talk to him. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, and sorry to be difficult.
That's fine. That is how you're so important for us. Okay, Alex, it would be great if you can give your introduction to our audience so that they can connect with you, and then we will keep talking about the journey, about your career, what you have done, and so far. Right. So, give us a brief intro
Yeah,
of
sounds good.
yourself.
So again, thank you for having me. My name is Alex. I'm co-founder and CEO of Performa, and we're working on solving what I think of as like certainly one of the most important and maybe one of the most difficult problems in like running any company, which is understanding, like managing and optimizing the performance of people and teams.
That's great. That's great. So, tell us about your career as well. How did you started, and what were the ups and downs you have faced in your career, and about the Performica
Oh,
as well.
plenty of ups and downs. So
Yeah,
I
that is what the life of an entrepreneur
yeah,
is.
absolutely. So I started my career in software engineering, and I spent the first chunk of
Mhm.
it working in fintech, building various automated trading. And then in the
Right.
ripe old age of maybe 26, I realized that life is short, and that while the
Mm.
like engineering challenges that I was working on were very, very interesting, I kind of like I wasn't necessarily inspired by spending day in and day out moving other people's money around, and I wanted a change of industries. So I went looking to see where I could apply my skills, and I wound up leading engineering at a brand new biotechnology startup that was working on like understanding and using the understanding of human genetics to try to make people like healthier, live longer and healthier lives. And out of that experience, I wound up co-founding my previous company called Invite. Again, taking the same idea to take genetic data, analyze that genetic data, and use that to create better clinical outcomes for patients. And I spent about 12 years of my life doing that. The first couple of years
Right.
were we basically concentrated on building. It was a small team concentrated building on a technology prototype, and then suddenly the technology started working and sales started happening, and that's when the next really, or at least I think, fascinating thing happened in my career, which is human resources landed on my lap.
Right.
And the short of it was that there was like we hit hypergrowth. So that was the year we
Mm.
went from 20 people to a couple of hundred people. We would proceed to double every year. That was the year we started talking to investment bankers and planning our IPO. We took the company public in 2015. So from the outside looking in, it was a runaway success. We had knocked it out of the park.
Mm. Mm.
But
Right.
looking at the organization, it started getting harder and harder to get anything done. Again, we went from we went
Right.
from basically a small team of like scientists and engineers to now hundreds of people and then quickly thousands of people. We quickly became global, and things became really hard. We weren't prepared for the growth. Like politics emerged, decisions weren't getting made. There were
Mm.
now like factions of people within the organization kind of vying for power, vying for direction.
Mm.
And in a strange twist of fate, I got my first and last, I'll never say never, but my first job as an HR practitioner was as a chief people officer. And some of the tools that I built along the way to basically enable me to do that job on a global scale with thousands of employees, I then spun out into Performica, uh, which is what I'm working
Mm.
on now.
Right, right. So basically, it was you were jumping ships, right? So you were initially in the fintech, and then you went into the health tech, and then eventually you landed in
That's right.
Asia. And after the IPO, you had the hardest time when you were having politics and things were slowed
Yeah.
down, right?
Yeah.
So that was in the
Yeah,
health tech
yeah,
sector,
absolutely. And I think again, in hindsight, it's a pretty typical
right?
story. Like this is what happens to
Right.
companies who are not prepared for hypergrowth, and we weren't prepared for hyper.
Hmm. So, what was the reason of that environment? Because when you were working, a small team of engineers started working, and then, of course, when you are founding a company or co-founders and founders, they love their companies as
Yeah,
their babies,
absolutely.
right? And they do not want to destroy that. So, why things got changed? What were the key factors that pushed the company's culture toward the politics and leg pulling and all the stuff?
So again, I think this is pretty typical. So what winds up
Right.
happening, typical like successful companies as they're growing, and especially as they're going pretty quickly, you go through a few of these transitions. And the initial
Hmm.
transition is
Hmm.
basically once you start expanding past the founding team. Because if you think about it, we had a team of 20-ish people, 22 people, or something like that. And we spent years working together on the tech. And one of the things that
Right.
makes small teams incredibly powerful is this essentially like there's not a whole lot of structure and everybody knows everything that is happening and everybody's contributing at all levels. There's a like tremendous amount of ownership and buy-in. So for these smaller organizations, you can get a lot done. You can get a tremendous amount done, kind of in the absence of structure. And now suddenly
Hmm.
imagine that transition from 20 people to say a couple of hundred people. Two things happen. One is you can't have everybody involved in every decision anymore. You can't have everybody involved in every conversation anymore. And it's very, very easy for people to sort of lose touch and become disconnected from the mission. So now, like, communication and the
Right.
spread of information is something you need to be very, very deliberate about. At the same
Hmm.
time,
Hmm.
like decision making needs to become also in a way more structured, right? Where you can't
Right.
have everybody,
Right.
you
That
can't
makes
have like
sense.
everybody involved in every discussion. And
Hmm.
another thing that kind of happens often at the same time is you blow past the Dunbar number. Like in social sciences,
Hmm.
there's a pretty good amount of research about like how many like actual human relationships you can have at any point in time. And there's debate around what
Hmm.
that number actually is, but most people put it at like about 150. So most of us can keep
Right.
track of about 150 other people, like for real. And then past that, you kind of don't know anymore. And and I see founding teams like I see this happen all the time as founding teams like blow past that number and they suddenly become disconnected from their teammates, from their workforce. Like they don't, you go from knowing exactly who
Right.
everybody is and what they're working on and how good they are and sort of the names of their kids. And again, having like these real human relationships. So now you're too big and you don't know anymore. And it's a really jarring feeling. It feels like losing control. It feels like losing track of culture. While again, a lot of like the
Right.
operational and organizational part gets hard. And unless you manage that well, it can create this perfect storm where companies like lose their soul.
Don't you think that the one reason of that can be that if you define your roles clearly between the co-founders or founders, right? then you can avoid these things.
So I think there's a number of things you need to do to avoid these things, and one of them is
Right,
actually.
right. So let us know about those things, through which we can avoid these things, and when we are scaling, so that people do not have those kind of issues. So what are your one, two, three
So I
points
can
for
tell you.
that?
Let me actually answer a slightly different. Like let me tell you how this usually goes wrong, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Because again, this
yeah.
is a
Sure.
cycle that plays out all the time, right? Like I've seen this a number of times in my career, and I'm sure many of our like
Right.
listeners and viewers have seen this before. And it goes something like this.
Mhm.
So in the beginning, when you're a small team of like-minded people. Everybody is incredibly bought into the mission. Everybody is passionate, and in some ways, like structure gets in the way. You don't need a lot of structure to get things done. So people are like loosely coordinated, but like-minded and hardworking, and they can do incredible things. And if you look at like Silicon Valley or anywhere else in the world, you'll often see companies of like 15, 20, 25 people like do the sorts of things that large organizations can't, right? Like win fights with
I
massive
agree
companies.
with that.
Happens all the time. And then you start seeing success, right? So your idea goes to a prototype, and your prototype goes to a product, and your product finds product market fit, and now you have support structures around that product. So you have like marketing teams and support teams and lawyers, and then you go to a suite of products, and with that success you get the price of a success, and basically complexity increases. Like things go from simple to hard. Like prototypes are simple, products are hard, products are simple, suites of products are hard, and so on and so forth. And what winds up happening is that like the same things that made the initial like informal flat organization with an incredible amount of context, and where everybody is involved in every decision and really understands and cares about everything that's happening in the company, they kind of turn from strengths to weaknesses. So you go from like being
Right.
able to move nimbly and quickly informally, everything starts bogging down. And that's kind of what I was talking about. Like, it's hard to make decisions. Everybody wants to weigh in, everybody wants to participate. There's all sorts of opinions. Like in the absence of formal decision making structures, the conversations get circular. And typically, what winds up happening is this is where companies decide that, like, oh, it's time for us to grow up. We're not a little startup anymore. Usually this is done with like a sad sigh from certainly the founders, and that's when like middle management and process is brought in. So typically this is when you like org up, quote unquote. You bring in a professional management layer, you bring in tools and frameworks, you start tracking all of the things, aligning on goals, you have decision making frameworks, prioritization frameworks, you like really structure your internal communications. And the good news is that it's pretty effective. So when companies do this, like they do become more manageable. The problem is that also when
Right.
it becomes harder and harder to innovate, it becomes harder. You start losing this magic of having a
Mhm.
small team of like-minded individuals that with a high degree of freedom, like getting things done really quickly. You now have all of these like rituals and prioritization exercises and tools and roadmaps, and things become much more manageable and they become much slower. And, and I don't need to
Hmm.
tell you, right? Like innovation is speeding up,
Yeah, of
competition
course.
cycles are speeding up. Like we can't afford to slow down. So this is typically how like good fast things, incredible things slow down. And then often it turns out that like the next team of like very hardworking 20 people really passionate about solving your problem wind up leaving you in the dust. And fighting that cycle or mitigating that cycle was really the reason I went into the space. I went into the space and I took a challenge on. And the fundamental question is like, how do we make things orderly? How do we make sure that people are working on the right things and goals are aligned and the decisions are getting made and everything sort of doesn't grind to a halt, while at the same time we don't turn into this like slow moving bureaucracy that maybe works when you're a 70,000 person company or a 200-person company, but certainly doesn't when you're still, frankly, a small and brand new organization that hasn't really proven everything out. And that's where tools come in. And I came into the space and started building some of the tools where I couldn't find anything on the market that answered the questions that I had. And these are the tools that again turned into Performa.
Right, right. So you used all the learnings in the previous companies to build this tool, right?
Well, I mean, a little more than that.
That's a good way to start a
I
company.
built, I actually, so Performica is a technology spin-out. I actually built a bunch of the
Yeah.
tools in my last company, and I
Hmm.
started using them myself and saw success. And then, and this was years ago that we're talking about, we took it public in, so I started working on this in 2015 or so. Right around the end of 2016 or the beginning of 2017, I realized that some of the things that I built kind of for myself are seem really powerful and seem like they're more than like internal little tools to help Alex do his thing. So I started giving them away to other organizations to use, and that went really well. So people have been successfully using them for years now. And then many
Right.
things happened. Speaking of ups and downs, my last company went on a
Yeah.
roller coaster. We went from nothing to
Hmm.
an IPO to a market like well over $10 billion in market cap, and then the biotech sector crashed, and all sorts of bad things happened. So there's been plenty of ups and downs throughout the way. And at some point,
So when the bad things were happening, how did you exit from there?
well, so
The
I
company went shut down, or there
Oh
was
no,
something
the company is
else?
still around and continues to be a market leader.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I
Right. Right.
right around, I want to say early 2022, as the chief people officer of
Hmm.
again like a global publicly traded biotechnology company, I had the unfortunate job of overseeing like a relatively sizable layoff. We laid off almost 1,000
Hmm.
people. And that's when I really realized that the thing that I love working on, the thing that gets me out of bed every day, are the tools that I'm building. And like that is what I'm inspired by. I had another sort of like little personal crisis, if you will, and out of that, I went to my co-founder and CEO and to the board of directors, and basically negotiated a spin-out. So I took the technology and the team that built the technology with me into Performica as a spin-out from the last thing.
So you made an exit and took the technology from
That's
the
right.
company and built your own company,
That,
Performica,
that's right.
right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
my last
Okay.
company, Invite,
And
continues to be a customer, and we have like a wonderful relationship with them. We work close together, but
right.
again, now, but I am now once again a startup CEO, and work with them as a vendor essentially.
Right. So now you're consulting them that how they can improve the
We're not
things.
consulting, but again, we're a technology provider. So like Performa could build software.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and the
Right.
point of
Right.
Performica, like we're not a bunch of consultants that are like helping others
Hmm.
be
Hmm.
successful.
Hmm.
We build the tools
Yeah.
so that our customers can use those tools to be better at managing performance.
Of course, when you are in an HR space, so the most of time, the first thought comes that in HR you have multiple issues, right? Because when you're dealing with the human resources, human force, then you had to face a lot of challenges. So, what are the most challenging things you face on the daily basis, and how Performica is helping to resolve those issues?
Well, so I think when we talk about challenges, we often go to the symptoms, right? Like
Hmm.
disengagement from employees, quiet quitting, underperformance, regrettable attrition, difficulty to recruit the right talent, and so on. And these are kind of universal challenges. All companies have some version of this. Uh, again, this like ebbs and flows with the economic times and with business cycles and so on. But the way I think about this is these are all symptoms. And when
Right.
I started working on this problem again, first in the context of my day job, and now as a business, I really wanted to identify the root cause. Like what is the problem here? Why is this so hard? And what I realized is that there is essentially a massive disconnect between how we look at organizations and how work really happens. If you think about and I'm not talking about just the HR tools in general. If you look at like how we think about organizations, we look at them as basically a collection of verticals. Right? Like we focus on the organizational chart, like the pyramid structure with the CEO on top, and then people like the department heads reporting to the CEO, and we look at organizations as this collection of whether they're functional or businessy, but as a collection of verticals. And if you look at how work actually happens, and this is particularly true in like innovative technology companies, but it's actually true all around. If you look at how work happens, work doesn't happen this way at all. Right? Like work doesn't happen up and down the chain of command. Work happens very, very cross-functionally. It's highly dynamic. The key relationships between like the product teams, the engineering teams, the support teams, the sales teams, like the all of the things that really move the needle and basically make or break our businesses or our organizations, like they happen in these networks that excuse me, they happen in these networks that never show up on any organizational chart. And when we look at people as boxes on a chart, and when we look at people as, again, these like vertical strings of reporting relationships, or even worse, when we look at people as like lines on a spreadsheet, or the liabilities part, the liability section of our financials, we're not we're not being human centric. We're not being employee focused, and we're not looking like what we're looking at doesn't represent the way humans interact or the way that work happens. And it's kind of no surprise that these tools don't help us do all the right things. So the like Performica started as a way to bridge that fundamental disconnect, to look at the dynamic and cross-functional work that drives like the modern innovation economy, and really map it out, and then start interacting with our people and our team like through
Right.
that prism, through that like reality based prism.
So my next question will be that how you're using AI and ML in Performica to evaluate the performance of the employees, and how you are effectively using it to make your product a better one.
That's right. And where we lead on machine learning is, again, in this model is
Hmm.
the real, we call this a Performica org graph. And this really is
Right.
like the key underlying technology. And where we use ML is to
Hmm.
help us map out the organization. Again, like which engineers are checking code into the same repositories, which people are spending time in meetings together, which people are doing the same tickets
Right.
around in the CRM. And we use that to target
Hmm.
in the feedback collection portion. We use that knowledge to be able to basically ask the right people the right questions at the right time to really get
Hmm.
insights that
Hmm.
will move a needle for like manage for people running teams, for people running the organization, for the HR department. And we lean pretty on machine learning
Right,
there.
right. So basically, you are making all the connections of workflows. You're automating all of the information, creating a knowledge base,
Mhm.
right? And then you are utilizing that knowledge base to evaluate their performances, and then do recommendations on the basis of that knowledge base,
There's
right?
more that we do there. What we do, you can really think of Performica as an active passive system. So on the passive side, again,
Right.
we're mapping out the cross-functional work and all of these key business systems. For the tech folks
Hmm.
listening, you
Hmm.
can you can kind of think of this as business system observability, or people system observability.
Okay.
And then, but that's not like
Hmm.
that information is empirical, based on reality. but it needs color in order to make like really human decisions and understand the humans. So what we do is we use that knowledge and we use the org graph to be able to collect feedback from individuals on how the company is doing, on who their key resources are, who do they go to for domain expertise, who do they go to mentorship, and so on. And we use the underlying organizational graph to know which questions to ask to which people, so that we get the right
Right.
information.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So, where do you want to lead this in future? What else you want to do in the next coming 3 to 4 years through machine learning?
So, in general, I think that Performa is the beginning of a transformation of how we look at organizations. If you think about it again,
Okay.
like people are our biggest asset, they're our most expensive asset. Just about all businesses spend
Hmm.
more on people than they do on anything else. And in order to like, and this sounds businessy, but in order to like optimize our people, but also in order to like give them fulfilling jobs where they're happy, where they're growing, and so on, like where they're truly engaged and
Right.
productive. Like we need to understand them better. And whether we're dealing with like corporate communications, or we're dealing with managing performance, or we're dealing with change management and understanding like the drivers of change and the change agents in the organization, like the organizational graph really is a foundation for, I think, most things people management. And again, this goes beyond HR. This goes to like functional people management. Almost whatever it is that you're doing can be done better if you understand how people actually interact and like what drives them and where they create value and where they derive value. And I think in general, I see this technology as a foundation for basically all of people management tools. Uh, Again, starting with feedback and performance and all the way through to like personalized communications and tailoring the right benefits to the right people and so on.
Right. So you have said one important thing in that people are asset. So I have a
Uh-huh.
question. I'm twisting it a little bit. What do you think? People are asset or liability? And if they're asset, why every company wants to replace it with machine learning?
So so I think so people can certainly be both. And
You know, we need some controversial
yeah, totally.
material
Let's do
as
this.
well.
So if we're going to be like, if we're putting our accounting hats on, like people are a liability.
Hmm.
Like when we look at our financials,
Right.
right? Like our people show up on the liability section of our financials, and at the same
Hmm.
time, like look, we all know, right? Like we can't do anything interesting without people, and I
Yeah.
while I generally speaking, I think some roles like will absolutely be replaced by machine learning or augmented by machine learning and so on. I think at the end of the day, like I'm
Right.
squarely a techno optimist. Like my take is that
Hmm.
all of the wonderful tools that are coming along are going like they're already making productivity skyrocket in certain areas, and we're just getting started. But look back at history, man, right? Whenever productivity skyrockets, we can do more, quality of life goes up, demand goes up.
Yeah.
Like at
Hmm.
the end of the
Hmm.
day,
Hmm.
this idea that people will be out of work because AI is doing all of the things, like I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think AI is going to enable us to do better things. Our expectations will go up, our lives will improve, we'll want more,
Yeah.
and I don't think it ever ends. And I'm looking forward to that. Like
I think
I love that.
the challenge will be because the transformation is so major. Uh, New things will pop up, that is for sure. But I think that this transformation is so huge that it will be very challenging to meet the new expectations, to meet the new era. I'm specifically using the word era because I think that your whole socio-economic structure will be changed. Your economics are going to be changed, your social issues are going to be changed, your challenges are going to be changed, your crimes are going to be changed. Each and everything you see today, this is going to be changed within the next 5 to 10 years. And I think it might happen earlier than that, because things are going so fast, things are moving in so rapid manner that The most challenging part is to keep yourself up with the current situation, and uh, keep up to date with the current knowledge base. So that is the most challenging part, because the learnings are going to be lifelong from now on.
I'm with you, and I think the jury is still out. All right, so like, are we experience
Hmm.
like what order of magnitude is this? Like, will this be? Look, I'm old
Yeah.
enough. Like, I think you might be as well. But like, I remember the internet revolution, right? Like, I grew up with like
Hmm.
phones you had to dial, like with my fingers, and then the internet happened.
I am not that
Oh,
old.
I'm
I'm not
sorry,
that old.
I made it sound but
That's fine.
I remember that time well, when the internet happened and society transformed. Now it was a
Right.
massive transformation, but not quite at the scale you were describing, I think. Or to use another example, like we could
Hmm.
look at the
Hmm.
American Industrial Revolution in like
Hmm.
mid to
Hmm.
late 1800s. And there, like everything truly did change. Like this, like society transformed, I think, in a much more fundamental way. And I
Yeah.
think maybe, at least in my
Hmm.
mind, the
Hmm.
jury is still out. Like, are we going through the internet revolution, or are we going through the next industrial revolution? And I think we'll know soon. And I, luckily, like maybe I'm old, but I'm young enough that I think I'll see the answer. And I really like, I am fascinated. I'm looking
Yeah, of
forward to it.
course. Yeah. Right, right. Let's talk about another topic, and which is remote work. So, is your company remote?
My
That is
company is
my
fully
first question
remote.
for you.
I have
Right.
just one more person here in California, and the rest of the team is spread out actually all over the world.
Hmm.
We have teammates in like Serbia and Kazakhstan and Portugal and
Right.
kind everywhere.
Hmm. Right. So, you are the right person to ask what are the pros and cons of remote work.
Well, so I think the pros are really straightforward: access to talent, and I've always
Yeah.
optimized access to talent. Again, going back to like people being
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
greatest asset, like I'm a firm believer that like I will do anything and everything to access to the best talent in the world, and we've done that, by the way,
Hmm.
before it was cool. So like my last company was fully remote in the
Right.
13, 14 years ago. That was much less of a thing back then, or not fully remote, or sorry, never fully
Hmm.
distributed. I messed up.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's a pro. Like we can get to the right people and really, really optimize that. We have like the best brains and the best hands working on the problem at hand. And then the hard part is obviously sort of, well, there's two, right? On one hand, and we do this, like we get together every once in a while. Like like the Performa team will meet, like assemble in person and spend a week together every once in a while. And because like human interact, like again, we're humans, right? Like we like connections. And then of course there's a challenge of like coordinating work and making sure everybody is aligned and so on. And I think it's less of a fundamental challenge of remote work. I think there's nothing like fundamentally hard about this. I think it's just that again, we're stuck in the
Hmm.
old paradigm of managing people, like managing butts and seats. And a lot of the time, like we don't have the right instincts and the right tools. But I don't think there's anything fundamentally difficult about managing remote organizations. And there's tons of remote organizations that are like very, very good at this. We just need to learn. We just need to learn.
Right, right. That makes sense. That I also know that remote has its own challenges as well, and yes, many companies right now are doing these kind of things, that they arrange kind of trips or something like that for a week or so, so that the whole team can come and they can gel in with each other. They can know each other. So I do know that remote has challenges, remote has pros as well. I'm leading remote teams from last 10 years. We are providing staff augmentation services from
Uh-huh.
Pakistan. So I do know these things, and we try our best, because I am at the other end. I am at the end of providing services, providing remote staffing. So I'm at that end, and you are at the side of client side, you can say, that you are using people, you are managing people all around the world. So that is why I ask this question a lot, that what are the pros and cons, so that uh, we can at least
Yeah.
check that what are the issues that needs to
Yeah.
be addressed. Communication is the top most priority for all the people. That communication should be top notch if you want to execute, and we know that how important the communication is. I think you are right that access to talent is
Yeah,
the pro.
yeah.
That
Let me say
you
something controversial, like maybe a little controversial.
Yeah,
So I
yeah, please.
actually think that successfully managing like remote and distributed organizations, I don't think there's anything special about it. I think it's just good management. It's just that some of our
Hmm.
crutches get taken away.
Hmm.
Like we can all be
Hmm.
sitting, like we can rent a giant office, right, and all be sitting in the same room, like here in San Francisco or wherever you're based,
Hmm.
and we're going to do better if our communication is top notch and if our goals are aligned and if
Hmm.
we're like checking in on all of these things in a structured way and information travels through the
Hmm.
organization also in a structured deliberate way. Now when we're all together, like when we're all co-located, we can kind of get away with doing a bad job because people will like meet in
Yeah.
the cafeteria, talk around the water cooler, like they'll kind of fill in for our failures as communicators, as leadership. And so you can get away
Hmm.
with being bad at your job. But I think if we want to be
Hmm.
excellent, and I don't know, I for one, right, like if I'm spending like days and hours and years of my life doing something, I try to be very, very good at it. But when we try to be excellent, I think managing distributed organizations and managing like co-located organizations, I don't think there's any difference. And I think if we strive to be very
Hmm.
good,
Hmm.
we'll be doing kind of all of the same things.
I think yes, you have summarized it in a way that it's the manager who is running the team. That if he's good enough, if he knows the things how to execute it, then things get better. And I agree with that. And in that, I will add one more thing, because a lot of agencies, what they are doing is they are miscommitting, they are miscommunicating,
Mm-hmm.
right, just to get small fraction of business. So I want to call out uh, from this platform that if even you are even if you are an agency providing service, you need to be aligned with the vision of the company, with the vision of the product that is going to be developed from your company. If you are not doing that, if that person who is investing in product building, if that product is not going into the market, if that is not succeeding, that means you are ending one venture that can be lifelong for you. Because if he is going to get success, you are going to get
Yeah,
more business. Eventually the game is that you have to collaborate with each other and keep the business
yeah,
going. So both clients and the agencies, they need to be aligned on the vision of the
yeah,
product. They should know that what needs to be developed. Things should be transparent. Things should be very, 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 very transparent. Development issues are very common, and you get stuck in those issues. Tell them, tell your clients that this is the problem we are stuck in, and this is how we will resolve it. That's it. That is the solution. Even if they are lashing out at you at that point, that is fine, because they are expecting, they have made some commitments
yeah,
throughout, right? So I think that is the thing that
yeah,
agencies should do. And for the clients, I think they should also support the
yeah.
transparency. They should also not go toward the other direction and keep
Yeah.
things shady.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. The only thing I'd add to that is that this is also a tooling problem. Like
Yeah.
it takes like structure and discipline and the right tools for like remote and complex
Yeah.
organizations to do this really, really well. Like hence Performa and
Hmm.
like and that's why I'm here. These are the tools that we're building. But
Yeah, we should promote Performica in here as well.
yeah, come talk to me separately.
Okay. Okay, I think there is one other aspect that I would like to talk. During the Ukraine war, you were very active, and you were providing support to the
Mhm.
refugees as well. So, what do you think that being involved in businesses, you have your stakes high? So, should we do that social work along with that, which is controversial as well? Because in a war there are two parties, there are two opinions, because war is between the
Mhm.
two opinions, right? One and both of them are thinking that they
Yeah.
are right, they are right at their stance, right? If you are a hero for one party, you are a villain for the
Yeah.
other party. So do you think that businesses or businessmen should that much? First of all, I would like to encourage you as well for be that courageous and be that brave, that you can publicly say that this is what you're doing. So I would like to know that what makes you that much brave,
Well, so
and
I mean,
whether we should do
first
it
of
or not.
all, like if you look at bravery, yeah, right? Like what I did didn't require a whole lot of courage, right? Like I wasn't in the
Yeah.
line of fire. I didn't put myself at risk. Like there are much braver people doing much scarier things than I am. I think going back to your original question is like, what should people do? Is like, I mean, the answer is I don't know. Like I certainly like can't speak from a position of telling people like, should you take a stand, should you not take a stand, and so on. Like there are many things going on in the world at any point in time, and some of them like I choose to get involved in, and some of them I don't. When the Ukrainian war happened, like I felt like I had no choice. Like I grew up in the Soviet Union. I was born in Moscow. I came to the U.S. as a refugee from the Soviet Union. I have like friends and family in Ukraine. I have like coworkers in Ukraine, and when the invasion happened, I felt that like I actually felt that on a personal level I needed to do something about it. And initially, I didn't have a plan. Initially, I just like bought a ticket, got on a plane, flew to the Ukrainian border, and tried to like figure out how to be helpful. And that turned into like a wonderful organization that continues to do a lot of really great work that I'm super proud of. But for like that was a very very personal thing for me, and I like I'm certainly not one to generalize.
Yeah, that was a good thing as well, because that is what I said, that war is between the two opinions. It is not like that two parties are uh, fighting with each other. These are two opinions, and I hope, I wish that we leave this world a better place by resolving conflicts
Yeah.
through talk.
No, I love. I
So
again, I wasn't in the thick of it, but I certainly saw some things that I will never unsee, and I talked to and worked with and helped a lot of people who like just suffered terribly, yeah? And
yeah,
like good God, like war is a travesty, and
yeah.
if like I if
I have a lot of admiration for you.
yeah, I guess like I in this particular case, I feel like I did my little part, and a part of me is proud of it. But yeah, I did God. If there was a way to like not have these things happen, like if there's some lever I could pull, I would pull it.
Yeah. I think we should leave that discussion, right? So that we do not go and we do not divert our discussion toward that point. But I have a lot of admiration for you for doing the good work, and yeah, please.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're welcome. So in the end, I would like you to give some advice to the newbies who are coming into the businesses and who are founding their own ventures. Tell them what they needs to do and what they need to avoid.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I'll give two very different pieces of advice. And by the way, take all advice
Right?
and my advice too with a giant grain of salt. I think who knows? Like maybe I know what I'm talking about. Maybe I don't. But I'll give like one philosophical thought and one very very practical thought. The philosophical thought I'd say is like pick what you work on carefully. uh, I have a family, I have young children, I have wonderful friends. I spend more time at work than I do with any of them. Like literally most of my life is going to work. Life is short. We only have this much time to get something meaningful done here. So like and my real advice is like especially if you're going to start a company, because starting companies is like even more work and it might not work and it's risky and so on and so forth. It's like really, really focus on the thing that like you want to dedicate a good chunk of your life to, because to have any shot at being successful, you're going to have to dedicate a good chunk of your life to it. And you don't want to look back on the last 10 years of your life having maybe even made some money, but not feeling proud. And then on a very, very practical side is like, don't repeat my mistakes. But when I talked about my last company, like we let growth and success kind of get away from us and it almost killed us. So I would say, like, while you're still small and while things are still happening, like put in the structures to make sure that like your company is values aligned and we know what those values are, and that like there's like structured communication and structured goal setting, and there is a cadence and a rhythm to the way the organization runs. Because like believe me when I tell you, you can put all of that in when things are good, and you will have an enthusiastic bunch of people who are going to help you as a founder, as an executive, get this right. Like it'll be actually kind of fun. You'll do a good job. Uh, if this runs away from you, and like us the last time around, you're like managing chaos and flirting with failure and trying to like really plug all of the holes while like all of the other things are happening. It's like it's really, really hard. So like get ahead of the organizational stuff. And if you spend some time thinking about it, reading about it, and really taking it seriously, you'll find that it's like this really isn't like boring bureaucratic HR like things. It's actually absolutely fascinating. It is wonderful when it works. And if you get ahead of things and you go into like success prepared for growth, it'll just be a lot less painful for you and a lot less painful for the people who rely on you as a leader to like who
Right. Right.
essentially are
Right.
trusting you with a good chunk of their life.
Thank you so much, Alex, for the wonderful session. And I would like to thank from the depth. And thank you so much for all the people watching this episode. And we promise to keep bringing more tech stars to your screen.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Hey, thank you
Alex.
so much. This was a great conversation, and thank you for having me.